What is up, YouTube, and welcome to Narrative Crusades. We are continuing our Deathguard series. Today, we will be looking at Plague Marines. Are they still strong, if they ever were? Let's have a look at our basic Plague Marine. Here's our 10,000-year-old superhuman Spod. He is slow with a movement of 5. He is tough at 5. His save is 3. He has 2 wounds. He's got a 6+ leadership and an objective control of 2. We know that he is not going to be a tournament staple. What we're doing today is we are taking a positive slant on using our models in games with our friends or at our local store. Balance at home with friends is something we should all be trying to do. It should be good fun. I've been using them quite a lot in my games at the moment, and to be honest, I've had quite a few good games with them. Considering how this can be achieved, what do we actually want to do with them? How can we get the best out of them, considering they have access to a lot of different weapon options and abilities and loadouts? Firstly, I'm going to talk about the champion. I don't really vary this guy very much at all. I don't see why I'd want him to have a bolt gun when he could have a plasma pistol or a plasma gun. There is a debate over the plasma pistol, but personally, I pretty much stick with the plasma gun. And you've got the choice of melee weapon. You either got more attacks or harder hitting attacks that are less likely to actually connect. Effectively, I always go for the plasma gun and the heavy plague weapon. Mine are all modelled with this anyway, so that's my choice. You might want to kit yours out slightly differently based on the 2 different types of squads we're going to look at now. So the first squad I call the Anvil. Now this is the squad that we actually want to be sitting somewhere relatively safe on the board, maybe holding our own objective, particularly if our opponents have some deep strike, but we still want the unit to actually be effective. So the first weapon option we make is to give them 2 blight launchers. They're slightly shorter range, but they're still damage 2. They've still got a bit of AP. They're still fairly reliable at chunking some units here and there. The second option we take is 2 plasma guns. Now, there is an argument for some belchers, but there's not really an argument for a melter gun here because the melter gun's probably never going to be in range. The belcher is good as some kind of defensive option if we get charged. And the rest of our unit is equipped with bolters. Now, this unit is capable of kicking out 3 plasma gun and 2 blight launcher shots a turn. You can overcharge them if you want to risk it, or we really need to kick out some damage. Regardless, if they get within 12 inches, suddenly we're looking at 6 overcharged plasma gun shots and the blight launcher shots. That actually adds up. But we can actually increase the lethality of this unit by adding a biologist putrefier. He's 55 points, and he actually gives all of our weapons lethal, even the plasma guns. It's a bit of a shame in a way because, to be honest, our bolters have already got the lethal wounds option. Lethal hits, sorry. However, he also gives crit hit on a 5+. So all of our guns are suddenly auto-wounded on a 5+. He also has the free grenade stratagem once per turn and a couple of useful grenades himself. So if someone does get quite close to us, we might be slow, but 5 plus the range on the grenades, or 5 and then rapid fire range, that's still a reasonable threat for us to kick out some damage if we choose to. The next option is a Tallyman. Now, I'm not convinced a Tallyman's worth taking since we don't get to reroll our command point in our opponent's command phase anymore. So we're getting between 2 and 3 command point regens per game on a 7-up. If you do decide to take him, this is a pretty good squad to put him in because then you're hitting on 2s. And he has an infected plasma pistol, although that is quite stunted in terms of range. So now we've got this little back block of unit that's sitting at the back, shooting away with its plasma guns, shooting away with its blight guns. We've not got much AP on our basic bolt guns, but we're getting quite a lot of auto hits, auto wounds. Don't forget, 10 shots from our bolt guns, 5+ is an auto wound. It will start to put some chink damage on there. However, if we do find people are getting quite close, then Ferric Blight really can come in handy. And now suddenly a lot of our guns, especially the plasma guns, the blight launchers, are really chunking units out that don't have invulnerable saves. And even the bolters going to AP1 can be quite nasty. Right, that's the Anvil covered. What about the hammer? Right, again, we start with our plague champion, heavy plague weapon, and plasma gun. Now, it gets a little bit complicated just because of the weapon choices that we can have. So just running through it one by one. First off, I have 2 bubotic weapons and 2 heavy plague weapons. That's our melee options covered now. That's the most we can actually have in the unit. So that's our heavy hitting weapons and our slightly less heavy hitting weapons, but with more attacks. Then what we consider is 2 belchers. There is a good argument here to take 2 melter guns instead. That gives us some anti-tank. It's something that we're kind of lacking in our army anyway. It is short range, but the thing is because we can add 2 spewers in, I like to have 2 belchers. Because on Overwatch, that's 4d6 automatic hits. And in a moment, we're going to see we can make that even nastier. That gives us 1 Plague Marine left. What can we give him? A Blight Launcher. Now, we are sacrificing a Blight Launcher in here. You might have a slight preference, but I like the fact that we've got a lot of melee weapons. We've got a lot of flamers. What I try to consider as we take casualties is what I'm going to lose first. I always take off the Blight Launcher first because I want the threat of the Overwatch. After that, it really does depend on what I think is going to happen. If I think the Overwatch is all I'm going to get off and I'm not going to get to hit anything, and I actually start to take off my bubotic weapons and then my heavy plague weapons, so then my Overwatch is still a threat. If I think I'm going to get to use them and nothing else, then it's better to do that than actually to lose the Overwatch capacity and then just get killed in close combat anyway. However, that can all change if we add our Foul Blight Spawn. For 55 points, he has a really nasty flamethrower, D6 more shots, anti-infantry 2+, AP 2, damage 2, and he gives the whole unit fight first. So suddenly, maybe losing my flamers first is better because if I get charged, I'm still going to get to hit things. It does depend what I'm going to get charged by, though. And then there's another argument again that says that maybe we should be adding the Biologist Putrefier. Now we're going to be losing some efficiency with this particular loadout because 5d6 of our attacks are anti-infantry anyway, and we're not rolling to hit, so the auto wounds just don't come through. However, close combat, that counts too. So a lot of our hits are going to be auto wounding, and they do cause quite a bit of damage. They do have quite a bit of AP. How can we make this even nastier? We can add Sanguinous Flux. If we're on an objective, we get sustained hits. If we're on an objective we control, it goes to 2 sustained hits. If it's it's 1 automatically moving to 2 sustained hits. Suddenly, we are actually kicking out a huge amount of damage. It is worth mentioning, Disgustingly Resilient is an option for us, but I really think for 2 CP, only in our fight phase for a unit of Plague Marines, this is something that we're perhaps just going to have to say is not a thing for us anymore. Unless we've got a Terminator Sorcerer on our Blight Lords and our Death Shroud, we need to save that CP for more viable units that have a bit more staying power. Being a bit optimistic for a minute and deciding to compare these to some other similar units, I think we could put a solid case in that our unit costs 190 points. I think that's better than the same amount of intercessors. And I think that's almost regardless of buffs we're putting them on them or anything else. So in that regards, Plague Marines come out all right. If we compare it to a unit of Custodian Guard, they get 3 Custodian cards for 195 points. That's 9 wounds. I'd be really interested to do the math hammer on what 4d6 automatic hits do to these guys. If we spent another 55 points and we got to fight first and we had another Custodian Guard in, I'm willing to bet that we actually come out on top of that fight. So again, actually, quite a viable unit. If we throw some Incubi in there, 170 points, they've got 10 wounds, they're just going to die to our Overwatch. Absolutely going to get rinsed if they try and kill us. And then our cousins in action, the 200-point Legionnaires, I think they're quite comparable, for sure. They have a little bit more flexibility in the fact that all of their guys can get chainsaws. But don't forget, we're lowering their toughness. We'll be wounding them on 3. They're still going to be wounding us on 5s. So in a way, I think we win that fight as well. So it's not doom and gloom at all. I think finally we're each going through our own little personal thing at the moment. Personally, I think I'm quite happily on to acceptance now. -1 damage is gone for good. It was good while we have it. I think it's time just to move on, start to enjoy the game, have some really good fun, get the most out of our Plague Marines. Once again, I'd like to say you will never have a better chance to win a combat patrol from us. The offering is still there. We've had an influx of support. Thank you very much for everyone who's getting involved. Please do continue to subscribe and please do add comments on the bottom. They are definitely helping the algorithm gods and we appreciate the support.